Hey everyone, today we're going to be going over GitHub Actions. Everyone loves having their stuff up on GitHub, but you didn't have any integrated things for CI/CD. You had to use something like Travis CI or Circle CI, but now they have their own integrated CI processes that you can take advantage of. There's a lot to go over, so let's get right into it. If you're in the open source space or just starting to learn how to program, likely you've been told to get a GitHub account. GitHub is kind of the center of all open source on the internet at the moment. There are other spaces, but most projects are all going to be on GitHub. Before though, GitHub lacked any integrated CI/CD solutions when you were working on these open source projects. You had to use an additional service that was added on with their own file that would kind of account to it, and then you would have to have another account somewhere, and then if you wanted to see results, you had to go to a different site, and then you would have to go and check that and just go over and over and over again. You're wasting time. The workflow needs to be in the same space. This is why I like GitLab, because it's all in the same little spot. It's a tab, done, boom. About a year ago, they actually released their own version of CI/CD. Very much like GitLab, except for the fact that they built it in their own kind of special way, in their own little secret sauce. They called this GitHub Actions. They're built to be highly extendable, with the philosophy of sharing code and sharing actions. That is the basis of their entire system. It's modular and set up so that way you can take someone else's action, or all of the actions that they kind of pre-built, and use that in your own CI/CD. Or you can write your own and then share it with everyone else. I'll get into what an action is later, and I'll actually be going into what the code is for writing your own action and how that actually integrates into a workflow. Like all CI/CD systems, GitHub Actions are organized in a job system. So that way you have the job, which is the larger orchestration of everything that you want to do. So a build would have multiple steps that you would have in there. And then you would have test that has multiple steps in that. Each step can use a different action, which is how it is modular. You can have a checkout action to get all your code. Then you can have a test action. And then you can have a JavaScript one that maybe it goes in there and does some JavaScript stuff. I don't know. I don't use JavaScript. Now, the interesting thing about GitHub's actions versus other CI/CD processes is that it's kind of a legacy system in a way. Instead of having it built on as just a simple job, like in a Kubernetes or Docker situation where the code and every file system that is in your actual action is separated away from every other running of an action, they generate VMs that are then going to run those actions. So there is a potential for collision with other systems, but I'm sure that they have smart people that have worked out the back end of it and have a real good reason for why they decided to go with a legacy system. I don't think it's a good reason, but they have a reason. But at the same time, because it's legacy, it's tried and true, it's a little bit more stable potentially than something that is modern. If it works and it keeps working, that is more important than doing something for the sake of, yeah, I did it because this is the fancy new framework. JavaScript. Another thing that I kind of noted while I was going through it is that it's free to start off. You can start using GitHub Actions and not have to worry about paying anything up until you hit a certain limit of compute minutes and then also API requests. So even if you have your own self-hosted system, you still have to make API requests to GitHub. This is similar to what happens with the drug dealers where they give you a bit of Molly and say, oh, it's on the house. And then 5 months down the road, you're trying to get a whole bunch of it. And he's like, nah, it's going to be like $200-$300. You got to pay for that now. And as well, on the enterprise side, if you are using it that much, it's not that expensive now. Guaranteed, they're going to jack that price up over time. So just keep that in mind when you are starting to use this system. But all that aside, this is just my own nitpicking in terms of the actual system itself. All right, so I have my own repo that I've kind of built up that's called Actions and Actions. I'll put the link to this in the description, and once I have access to cards in YouTube, I'll put it up in the top right. It'll pop up and say, hey, here's where you want to go. But for right now, it'll be in the description. This repo I have purpose built for just looking at actions. That's all that's in here. But I've tried to do it in different ways that I can show you. Every single bit of action work or bits that are related to actions are all going to exist in this .github directory. So when you actually build up your own code, you'll put it in here. We'll click into here and you'll notice that there's actually two folders in here. There is the workflows and then there's the actions directories. Actions is where you define your own pre-built actions. Workflows are where you define sets of jobs that you want to do. They can be different things, and we'll get into that. I have 3 workflows here. The most basic one is this main.yaml one. The most simple, basic workflow that you could create on your own. You have to have a name, you have to have an on, and jobs. These are the 3 things that you need in this file, the name of it. So that way GitHub Actions knows what's going to be running. You need to know when this is going to run, which is this on. There are different things that you can use on here. So there's push, there's pull request, there's endpoint hits, and set up a endpoint where once that endpoint is hit, it will start it off. The most basic ones and the most ones that are going to be used on a regular basis will be this push or pull request. For this one example, I have it on push and I have branches on master. So you can put different branches on here as well. So this would be your master branch workflow, for example, if you had a deployment that you wanted to go out. Jobs are where you're going to define multiple specific tasks. Each job essentially is a virtual machine that GitHub is running for you. They spin it up or they have it just idle somewhere, which is my own weird nitpick. I mean, just use Kubernetes. It's modern. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. But they obviously just have some VMs that are idle around here that they could just use. This one here that I have is called test. You have test, and this is basically you can have multiple in a row. They run in the order of precedence, essentially. The first one in the line gets run first, and then it goes down the road all the way down. We have test, and within test, you're going to have basically 2 things. You're going to have this runs on, and then you're going to have steps. Runs on is what you're going to tell it to run on, what machine you want this task to run on. There are 3 different types of machines that they have set up and available for you to use. You have Ubuntu ones, and you can use specific releases of Ubuntu. I just use latest. This would probably be about 20.02, I believe, is what this will run. But you can run 18.04 or 16.04. It's all available for you to use. There is also Mac OS. If you have Mac OS specific software and you want to test it on that. So that way, if you're working on a Apple product that will eventually be pushed to the Apple Store. The other one is a Windows machine. So you can actually pull up a Windows machine and run on there. Again, this is in case you're deploying a desktop application that will go on there. So those are the 3 type of virtual machines that you can run on. After this, you have steps. Steps are the specific actions that you want to take on this VM in order to complete the task that you have set up. We have this in a list. And again, this is going to run from top to bottom, from 0 to 2 here. The first one is using an action. So this is a predefined action that GitHub has kind of set up. They've already set up the code and they made sure that it's stable. We're going to call it here. You're actually calling into another public repository that has been tagged to say checkout at v2 is here. So you're looking for the tagged v2 checkout tag on this actions repository. They have a lot of actions that are all in this actions repository. It's all the open ones that you can use. But this one just pulls in the code of my repository into the virtual machine. The next here is just echo. I'm running a shell command that is just telling the user what is happening in this process. And the next one is just a run script in my own repo. So you can see I'm actually going to go /run.sh. So this task here is only doing 2 things. This is how you can run a test script in your own repository on a GitHub action in their VM. If we go into actions here, I have a few different ones here, but we'll check out this Nearlo workflow and we'll check this latest one. I have 3 workflows on this side here. This is how you decide on each one. This here will show you all of the workflows that I've ever run on this repository, and I've done a lot. But I only want to see the runs of a particular workflow. So I'll click into the one that I just described. I'll go into the last run of it. And when you're in here, you'll notice that this run and the workflow file. It'll show you the workflow file and it'll actually allow you to edit it in their IDE. You can see that it also has this run, which is all the things that have kind of come out of this workflow. You can have artifacts, annotations, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't matter right now. But let's kick into the actual job that we ran, which is with that test job. So you can see we have the setup job, which is just setting up that virtual environment, that VM. And it's making sure that it actually has that actions checkout at V2. Next one is just to run that. So it's going to pull the code that I have in my repository into the VM. Next, we are going to actually tell the user what is happening. So that's the name. This is where that name kind of comes up, is right here. When we open that up, we can see that it's actually going to run that echo, the first step in the process. That is what I told it to echo out, and it did it for me. Fantastic. The next one that I did was this run script within my own repo. So it's actually going to run that /run.sh, and it echoes out exactly as that was. So that's how you get a basic workflow. But what if you want to make your own actions? What if you want to do particular things? You don't want to just use what has been already made. You don't want to take someone else's work and call it your own. I have examples of, we're actually going to go back into this .github, into this actions. I have two in here. There are two ways that you can create your own actions. You can create a Docker action. What a Docker action allows you to do is choose your own Docker image to run and use any language that you want to run your action in. If you want to run an action and write it in Ruby, you would do it through a Docker action. The other option is to write it in JavaScript. We're going to ignore the JavaScript until later. So the first one is just this great one. Now there are 3 files that I've added into this direct. There's a Docker file, there's an action.yaml, and then there's this entry point.sh. So we're going to click into this Docker file one first. All I'm doing here is I'm just pulling in that entry point.sh, putting it into a Docker image. That way we can build it. And we're just running it on the most basic of Docker images that are available, which is Alpine. Nothing complicated. We're just getting what we want. But you can make this in the way that you want to as well. So if you're running, for example, a Ruby script and you want to write your actions in Ruby, you can do it by just creating the Docker file and saying from Ruby Slim or from Ruby 2.6.5 because you have that particular Ruby instance that you want to use. You could do whatever you want with this, which is nice. You don't have to be strict on saying like it's only this language that you have to write in. The other file in here is that entry point.sh. So this is actually the script that's running in the Docker image. And this one, I've just made it as a shell system. Honestly, this is all from the doc, so I made this in the same way that you're gonna end up using actions. I made actions. No, you fucking stole it. So in this file here, we're actually trying to greet me. I want to greet whoever I want to greet with whatever variable that I put in here. So I'm saying, hello, and this just says whatever argument is the one that comes along with it. So when you run this in a command line, it'd be entry point.sh and nearlow if I wanted to say hello nearlow. And then we're echoing out the time that this ran. Easy enough, nothing complicated, nothing over the top. But then here's where we're going to find the actual action that can be used by their system. So this one is, we're calling it hello world. And we have a name, we have a description, which is greet someone, the most basic. Inputs, who to greet, which is you're basically saying what this action requires to run. So it needs a variable called who to greet. We give it a description. We say it's required. So you can have multiple inputs and say that you don't necessarily need it, but if it's additional and it will add some flexibility to your action, you can make it not required. And then we have a default. So if I don't put anything in here, it's just going to say hello world. Outputs are what it will spit out at the end of the actual thing. If we're spitting out, for example, the time, we're going to spit out time here. And the description is the time we greeted. Runs is here where we're actually going to say how this is running. You have runs, and it's going to use Docker. So we're saying that Docker is necessary for this to run. The image is the Docker file. So it will actually do the Docker build and build out the image how we've defined it with that file. And then it's actually going to run with that arguments who to greet, which is what comes from the input. That's how this kind of works, is it builds the Docker image, it'll run the code, and you can add additional inputs to it. So we can go up to actions, and we can actually see this in action. We can go greet Nirlo, and I have a few in here. Let's do this get singular. A job to say hello is this one. We have it all running in here. We have the checkout, because what you need to do when you write your own actions is you need to make sure that the files are available to run. And we're running greeting Nirlo. So I'll build the Docker image as I told you, and then it will say hello world or hello Nirlo. It's going to say hello me. Hi, I'm here. I exist. I'm important. Since it ran that, and you can see Docker run. And then I have a second one here that says, what was the time when it ran? And this ran August 15th. And then it does post checkout, cleanup, yada, 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 yada. So for this one, it's the same thing. Name, greet Nirlo, on, push branches, master, because I just keep pushing directly to master because this is just a mess around one. And we have jobs, this greet Nirlo job. Again, it's going to run on Ubuntu latest, a job to say hello. And we have these 3 steps here. So we have checkout, we have the greeting one, which is using the GitHub actions that I created. This is how it's pulling that action and using that action is by going through .github to actions to greet and using that code. We give it an ID so that way it knows how to actually pull out the time afterwards. And then we're actually going to, when we say with, we're saying what arguments we want to add into this job or not into this job, but into this step. I have set Nirlo to be who to greet. So those are some basic actions that you can build and run in GitHub now. You can extend them in ways that you want to. So if you have more complicated workflows, you can always set that up. But again, you can set up a full test structure and have a build job at the very end of it that needs those tests to run first before you do the complicated build process. This just ensures that we're getting quality code out. And we don't have to go into another tab. We don't have to go into another site to get the results. It's all just another tab sitting right here. It makes your workflow easier when you're working with codes in personal projects that you want to make sure that are up to snuff. So that way, when you share it, you're not sharing broken projects. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, like it. If you have any feedback or a particular small issue, comment down below and I will try and get back to you. As well, subscribe for more videos. Watch the next video for more fun as well as we learn more about DevOps. If you want to support the channel or you have a larger issue than just a simple comment will do, go to buymeacoffee.com/Nirlo. Link is down in the description and I will try and get back to you, or you can just feed the fiend and give me coffee. For now, that's all. Have a good one.